It has been exactly 1 year since I released my most popular video to date, and the video most of you probably know me from. Spy is the weakest class in TF2. What can I even say? This video got me to where I am now, and kickstarted my belief that maybe this whole talky YouTube thing is something that can actually educate and entertain way more people than I ever thought it could. Within weeks, this video shot my subscriber count to over 10-fold of what it was prior, and the video subsequently became the most popular on my channel. And believe me, the irony of a Spy main's most popular video, the video that people would find the channel from, being about how Spy is weak, is all but lost on me. But in a very short span of time, this video completely changed the game for me. I was receiving messages from circles of people and content creators I hadn't even heard of. People were mass joining my Discord server. I was starting to get recognized both in-game and across online TF2 spaces. The idea of a Patreon to support my output of content actually seemed reasonable. I hosted a charity livestream with friends shortly afterwards in which we raised 3 times our donation goal. I got invited to fundraisers, tournaments, and collaborations with some of the most passionate and lovely people I've ever met. I became referred to then, as I still am today, as the guy who made that one cool video about Spy that one time. It was really exciting. And don't get me wrong, I'm not just piggybacking off of the success of that one video. If anything, it inspired me more than ever to make cool shit. I had never been more excited to make things that would teach, entertain, and make people go, "This guy is really good." People's interest in my more heavily edited, talky videos made me want to make more of them. And I did, leading to the publishing of what I now consider to be my best video so far. But throughout all of this, all I could feel was thankful. Thankful that I could actually do what I enjoyed, writing, playing games, making music and editing, and that thousands of people would be right there ready to watch. It is a really cool feeling to have whatever rubbish you decide to make be backed by a ton of people you don't even know, but knew you and wanted to see you grow. And to this day, I'm still blown away with the overwhelming positivity and kindness I receive in every project I endeavor in. In other words, I'm still not used to it. But this video is not about me gushing over my YouTuber origin story, it's about this video. And the good thing about TF2 receiving no balance changes in recent past is that everything in this video is still 100% true, and I still pretty much completely agree with everything that was said. Spy is still weak, his playstyles are still stale, and the odds are still stacked against him. And for the most part, that is okay. Here's why. Believe it or not, in terms of chaotic, skill-based multiplayer online shooters, TF2 is surprisingly balanced. There is no class that is completely broken and unable to be overcome if you play your cards correctly. Likewise, there is no class that is borderline useless in every, or even most, situations. Every class has a distinct role in TF2 and a unique playstyle that makes TF2 the chaotic but surprisingly in-depth game that it is. And I think if you removed even one of these classes, or swapped one out for some new, mechanically different class, TF2 simply wouldn't work as well. And I think with some minor changes to some weapons and mechanics, the game could be pretty much as balanced as you can get, which is saying a lot in this day and age of out-of-touch game developers making decisions that actively harm their games. So in a way, the lack of updates for TF2 is actually beneficial for the health of the game. Who needs a heavy update anyway, am I right, guys? So, where does Spy factor into all of this? Well, as I say, Spy is the weakest class in the game. When placed against any other class with equal footing and skill level, Spy is more likely to lose than not. He is tied for the lowest max health in the game, being able to lower it more than any other class when equipping certain weapons. He deals very little damage when attacking from any direction other than behind, and his ability to reliably secure kills effectively decreases the longer he is in the game, with a lot of situations where you just have to hope someone else does something about it because you literally cannot. And yet, I think Spy is pretty fine right now in terms of strength. I believe that no matter what you do to Spy, you cannot change him without making him less fun or less fulfilling to play. Spy derives his success from playing like a real spy, sneaking around and deciding on your moment before striking, choosing the right targets and keeping a log in your mind of who is more likely to fall prey to your antics, causing general disruption and gathering information so that your team can do the heavy lifting. Spy is a support class for a reason. He is there to support the rest of the team in the areas that no other class can, and at the moment I think he does that perfectly. Spy is not designed to succeed in one-on-one confrontations or pull off insane, mind-boggling plays that make for great montages, and yet with enough time and practice he still can, and if all of that is not the definition of a successful character design, then I don't know what is. Spy isn't inherently strong, but he doesn't need to be. The fun of Spy comes from devising plans to get into the enemy's back line and, you know, ruffle some feathers. Get some stealthy picks, sap a sentry gun, maybe pull off a trick stab or two. Not from pushing forward through the front line lines and going in guns blazing against the enemy's defences to secure the cap. If the enemy team goes much quieter than usual and you find yourself having an easy time just peacefully pushing the payload, try checking your scoreboard and see if your spy is doing work. The best spies are the ones that you and your enemies don't even see. Now, of course, I do make the major complaint in my other video that Spy is very stale in terms of playstyles, and he is. His entire skill set relies on doing the exact same thing over and over again, sneaking behind the enemy and stabbing people when they're distracted. Playing Spy any other way is more of a gimmick and will usually reward less success than the traditional way of playing Spy. This is my argument when people bring up Gun Spy, a supposed subclass of Spy where you just use your revolver to deal damage instead of your knife. And sure, if you want to call it a subclass, that's fine, but I personally don't regard just using more of a weapon that you already had an actual subclass, especially when all it requires is just getting good with aiming, a skill which would factor into any other playstyle in the game, including traditional Spy. But as long as you're having fun just picking Spy and shooting folks, then I guess that's all that matters. There will always be a weakest class in TF2, and I personally just think Spy fits that role right now. For a class not designed for frontline pushes and direct confrontation, it makes sense that he would require the most skill to make good use out of. Right now, I wouldn't change a thing about Spy himself, maybe just tweak a few of his weapons to make them more varied and distinguishable from each other, and for the love of God, turn down the volume of the Dead Ringer, but I don't believe there's a problem with Spy as far as his strength is concerned. But I do believe there are problems around Spy that do need addressing. To put it bluntly, the game is working against playing Spy. I am of course talking about the bugs. You've probably already heard of the seemingly immortal bugs associated with the disguise kit, where you'll be displayed as holding an incorrect weapon, having a broken animation, or just straight up removing your legs sometimes when disguised as Demo Man specifically. Other times you'll just have your knife out while disguised, not hold a weapon at all, have several parts of your body missing, T-pose upon choosing a disguise, the list gets longer each day. Outside of the disguise kit, there's also a bug that I've only recently noticed where a vaccinator icon appears above my head at all times, even when I'm disguised and cloaked, giving away my position entirely. It doesn't occur often, but it persists between lives, and now I have no idea how many times it's happened because I just shrugged it off as, oh, I probably just gave myself away somehow. The Sapper is well known for its inconsistency of how to properly place it on a building, leading to many deaths by sentry guns that you swore you sapped beforehand. Not to mention the fact that you can make Sappers immortal when spammed on a building as it upgrades, and I don't use the red tape recorder enough to know, but I'm sure it's a buggy mess all on its own. Seriously, if you search any Spy item with the word bug next to it, you'll always get a result. It's kind of ridiculous. And the only way you can really attempt to counteract any of these bugs is by playing Spy for a lot of time. No one tells you these things when you sign up, and I'm certain there's glitches and bugs that even I haven't encountered yet, but there's one thing that will always be a detriment at any skill level as a Spy player: backstab hit registration. You know it, I know it, melee hit reg is scuffed. Sometimes you'll get stabs that were in no conceivable way from behind, and other times you'll be right on someone's toes and deal a sad 40 damage when you clearly should have backstabbed. This is so frustrating, especially since it is neither you nor the enemy's fault. Some line of code somewhere within TF2 just really likes messing up your backstabs, and I am now convinced that Gaben has a big red button to briefly turn off all backstabs that he just presses whenever he feels like causing psychological harm. But this is most likely an issue out of Valve's control, and honestly I have a feeling that if they were to try to fix this, it would break like 100 other things in TF2, so I guess we'll just have to grin and bear it for the time being. But it's not just the numerous unintentional bugs that work against Spy, it's the features within TF2 itself. It seems like with every new edition, the devs just forgot that Spy exists. And fair enough, he's a complex class to try and balance around, but the more I play him, the more I realise that some things in TF2 just straight up exist to spite him. I've talked about spawning wall hacks at length before, and while I now realise that there's plenty of people that actually use the free teammate only wall hacks that you get after respawning for its intended purpose, it still spits in the face of every Spy player who dares use the disguise kit, an item that's usefulness is already a contested and controversial topic. There's also melee hits being eaten by teammates who are clipping through you, a feature that negatively impacts all classes but is especially prevalent on Spy. The free wide camera shots you get of the map while you wait to respawn that just act as free spy checking tools to catch someone disguising or cloaking in a corner. Random crits being stupidly likely on melee weapons, making engaging with medics an incredibly risky play. Medics, the most defenseless class in the game. Particle effects like crits and mini crits are especially unfriendly to any Spy player. And hey, did you know that if you let your cloak run all the way out, it makes a louder noise than decloaking manually? Why? Because damn you for trying to maximize your resources. Sure, you can walk slower when disguised as classes like Heavy to make your disguise more convincing, but you'll stay the same painfully obvious spy walk speed when you try and disguise as Scout. There's also the strange disguise smoke that persists through invisibility should you disguise before cloaking with Invis or the Dead Ringer, meaning you'll always have to disguise after you cloak lest your enemy be able to track you when you thought you were invisible. If you're using the Dead Ringer, this means you'll have to do this stupid mind gaming dance where you're just waiting undisguised to get hit by something just so you can get away reliably. And that's really the key word here, reliably. Because the true detriment, the real weakness in Spy as a class, is his unreliability. The game tells you nothing about all these little loopholes and oddities that might occur when you play Spy, and if you don't commit to playing Spy for an extended period of time, you might never even learn that these inconsistencies exist or how to work around them if you can. And so, if I had to make a buff to Spy to make him more viable, I wouldn't buff him or any of his weapons so much as I would fix his mechanics to be more consistent. Because right now, Spy is kinda unfriendly to new players, with so many little things that need to be learned and kept in the back of your mind at every moment. Is my disguise holding the correct weapon? Is this backstab going to correctly register, or is this sniper just going to turn around and random crit me when I inevitably deal 40 damage? Is my unusual effect showing through my disguise? Did that mini crit particle stay above my head as I dead ringered out of there? Does this guy still have spawning wall hacks, or is it safe to decloak through walls? Are these overheal particles showing through my invisibility? It takes a lot of brain power just to keep up with all the things that could go wrong, that it turns many people off from playing Spy just from the unreliability alone. And I think that if Spy was just made more consistent in its mechanics, he could change from being disproportionately difficult to learn to a level on par with the other classes, which is where he should be. Spy's biggest weakness isn't because of how he's designed, it's because the game keeps forgetting how he's designed. Other than doing the bare minimum and cleaning up the bugs though, I'm not sure what else can be done to make Spy function more correctly. I still think that spawning wall hacks should be, if not removed, then made non-applicable to disguised spies. It would still lead to deaths out of your control, but markedly less so. Of course I'm all for removing random crits, not just because Spy is especially susceptible to them, but because the game genuinely just feels better without them. But I know that's a touchy subject to a lot of people, so I won't go too far into it. If you like random crits, that's fine. Pretty much all of this is my opinion anyways. In terms of weapons, I do still think Spy needs more varied playstyle. Like, way more varied. I'm often asked if I could add a new weapon into TF2, what would it be? And my answer is always a knife that cannot backstab, but provides some other utility that synergizes well with the rest of Spy's toolkit. This might be a horrible idea, and it might have a very specific niche and require a lot of time to make use out of, but that's exactly what I want for Spy. Soldier has a rocket launcher that deals 0 damage, why can't Spy have a knife that doesn't backstab? Because right now most of Spy's weapons are just a couple of percentage changes that are so indistinguishable that you can randomize Spy's entire toolkit and still end up playing the exact same way with every loadout you get. And this isn't just a problem with Spy, you could easily make the same case that Heavy, Medic, Scout, and even Sniper are all kinda stale, with only one real way of playing them that guarantees success, and with most other playstyles just being gimmicky memes. Spy doesn't even have a gimmicky meme loadout. He has 5 guns, 5 knives, 2 sappers, 3 watches, and 1 disguise kit, all of which have the exact same purpose. Be sneaky, cause problems. Give us something new. So, what to take away from this? Spy isn't bad, he's at the perfect strength level for what he's supposed to be, a sneaky European guy who is not supposed to be a frontline fighter. We know this because he has entire items dedicated towards getting out of fights, not into them. His entire mechanic and success level revolves around the enemy not knowing you're there, so it makes sense that when you're found out you're not as likely to survive. And that's the way it's supposed to be, that's the way we enjoy Spy, with his heart-pumping moments of breathing down the necks of your enemies knowing that at any moment you could be discovered and be dead to rights. But getting away with murder despite your flaws and weaknesses, despite the entire game working against you, and despite you going against every convention of first-person shooters, is what makes Spy a truly unique and addicting class to play. Some other final thoughts on my other video. Some people pointed out that I forgot to talk about Demo Knight in my last video, being the most varied subclass in the game, that it basically deserves the title of class all on its own. Don't know how I missed that one, but yeah, Demo Knight definitely serves to prove my point about Spy's lack of variety. The Observer Spy is not a subclass, it's an Eldritch Demon. I also don't think a subclass can be defined by just switching out one weapon for another. A few people argued for a Dead Ringer Spy subclass or a Kunai Spy subclass, and no, I think that's just using a different weapon. I don't think it necessarily warrants the title subclass when all you're doing is using the L'Étranger instead of the revolver. Also, a few people argued that there is a more aggressive way of playing Spy, the likes of Stabby Stabby, which involves using trick stabs and just going ham on the enemy with your knife, instead of playing Spy the more traditional sneaky way, and I also don't think this is really a valid argument, since this much more aggressive way of playing Spy is something that can only really be attempted once you've got some sizable experience and knowledge playing Spy in the first place. You can't really pick up Spy, select the kunai, and expect to be able to trick stab every enemy in sight. Only very few Spies can actually pull this off effectively, and even then it's an unreliable strategy depending on the experience of the enemy team. One final thing, a lot of people brought up my brief comment about Pyro being the worst class and kinda got upset at that, and I would elaborate on that thought, but unfortunately I can hear the outro music starting to play, so I guess I'll have to save that for another video. Cheerio.
Activate the charm, Doctor!